What's up, listeners? It's Andrea. Today, we are not impressed by dream episodes. Worf knows how to rock a really good turtleneck, and we ask the question, couldn't we just airlock this episode? Come nerd out with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're talking Season 6, Episode 16, Daddy Issues, Part 1. No, wait, that's not the right name. Birthright. It's Birthright, Part 1, but really, it's Daddy Issues, Part 1. This episode was written by Brandon Braga and directed by Weinrich Kolb. Worf and Data both seek to know more about their fathers. Worf through visiting a world inside Romulan territory, and Data through a newly discovered dream program. All right, what are your initial thoughts on this one? Can you tell by my tone what my initial thoughts are?
I think they're positive. No, my initial thoughts, like before I watched this episode, I was like, okay, I know this is a two-parter. I know it's about Data and his dad and Worf and his dad. I think this is the one where Data learns how to dream. And I think the Worf storyline is really part 2. So that was kind of my initial thing, was like a vague memory. So similar to part 1's in the past, part 2 is way better than part 1. But I have to say, after finishing the episode, I was like, wow, I did not remember how pointless this entire episode was. Like, we could just delete this. We didn't need this at all. Like, at all.
Backspace.
Yeah. So anyways, that was my initial thoughts, was like, I remember something. And actually, part 2, this I did remember. I knew part 2 was all about Worf in the prison camp. And that is my favorite Worf episode of all of TNG.
Me too.
I love it. So I was looking forward to part 2, and I could not remember what the heck happened in part 1. And now that I finished, I'm like, oh, that's why. Like, nothing really happened.
Because nothing.
Yeah. Anyways, what were your initial thoughts?
This episode is like living inside a static warp bubble, okay? It's just should be fucking deleted, okay? Is that the nerdiest sentence I've ever said?
It's not, but it's a really good one.
So my initial thoughts are like, okay, this is where Worf's story finally starts getting interesting for me. Yes. Like, we get like little snippets of like Kittimer and the betrayal to the Romulans, but it wasn't Worf's dad. It was that other fucker's dad. Duras. Thank you. Duras and all that shit. So it's like, okay, this is like where it starts to get interesting. I love that other fucker's dad.
I know. The greatest description of Duras in the history of descriptions.
Thank you. So I do think this is interesting. Like, he's breaking into Romulan territory to get more backstory on his family and his people. Yeah. Yay. And then the dream stuff I'm not into at all. I just remember it being like, just in general, something to know about me. TV and movie episodes that have dream states in it is usually where like the camera work is like really wobbly and you seem like you're sort of, I could do without all of that. Like, if you are a person, not that I'm important at all, but if you're a person who's hoping to capture me as an audience member, get the fuck out of dream world, okay? Because it's all like open to interpretation. It could be anything or nothing or everything. It's a bird's wing. Look, now it's cake. Okay, Nope. Also, I feel like the DS9 crossover
was very weak.
Yeah. Like, well, okay.
It was weak to me. I was like, I could dream up a better crossover. And we're not even writers. We're not even writers. The crossover to me was so weak. Like, if you were going to do a crossover, and granted, how many crossovers had ever been done on TV before this? Probably not many. So so fair.
Well, listen, remember the Dyson Sphere episode with Scotty?
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was amazing. Scotty was a member of the crew for a hot minute trying to save the Enterprise. This with like Dr. Bashir, I mean, he's easy on the eyes, so like I'm not mad at that, but like it just felt real. Like, I get why the network wanted to do that as crossover, but like
they should have done something like the Dyson Sphere. Yeah, I
just felt forced as hell. I hated that.
And that's the thing, is with the Dyson Sphere episode, it was like a cameo appearance, but it was a TNG episode. Really good crossovers are like that. This should have still been a great TNG episode with the DS9 crew. That would have made it like so interesting. And the whole episode could have taken place on DS9 with the Enterprise crew. Like, That could have been so interesting.
Yeah,
but it has
some sort of alien attack, and then they all have to combine like they're you know, they could have done this cool thing where like the Enterprise has to like undock itself from DS9 and like take it away on like a wild goose chase, while meanwhile DS9's working on some sort of fucking plan, and then the Enterprise comes back and redocks, and then they combine their warps. Something like all of this sounds way more interesting.
Like literally anything, but what they did was they just said, hey, we're going to go to DS9, but we're not going to really interact with anybody on that crew. And then we're also going to do a weird dream thing. Like, it was just weak. It wasn't as strong as it could have been.
I remember thinking about this episode years ago and being like, wait, was Dr. Bashir like on the Enterprise once or something? I feel like that was just like a weird fever dream I had or something. And then it turns out it was true. I was like, oh, wow. And it was just as dumb as I thought. So here's how we're going to break this down, guys. Okay. Because there's really two storylines. There's the Data Dream stupid ass storyline that we're going to talk about real quick. And then we're going to get into the Worf stuff, because that actually leads to next week's like way more interesting backstory. And also he's still wearing the outfit from like when Picard was captured. You know what I mean? Like
the
apparently
ninja outfit.
Yeah. If you spy around, you put on like a fucking kick-ass black turtleneck and some black pants.
I'm telling you, if I wore that outfit, I would look like a Oompa Loompa. It would not be as cute as Worf in that outfit. So
I don't know. I got
it for every spy. Maybe I'll just put it like that.
So I live in a house that has 2 bedrooms, and the second bedroom is like the guest room, but like nobody ever, you know, guest rooms are for storing extra shit because nobody ever comes to stay really. But the closet, I have all my cool stuff, right? I've got like my rock climbing equipment, my like snowboard, my skateboard, you know, and I'm always like,
so
what do I want to do? This is my bat cave, and it's just a guest room closet, right? But I feel like I need an espionage outfit to hang in there. That's just a black turtleneck with some black pants and maybe some sort of Star Trek-y looking backpack, because that's how you know I'm getting down to business. Okay?
And you know, it's like all like like polyester and spandex, so you don't even need to hang it and it won't get wrinkled. Like, I mean, these spy costumes are like the best. So yeah,
they're amazing.
We'll do it those 2 ways. And I will say they do pick up this idea that Data can dream in a future episode that I actually really like, where the ship
is that the cake?
Yes,
is that the cake with the Troy cake?
It's the Troy cake. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that with you, because I hate that episode.
Yeah,
so,
I believe it.
Right.
Since you said you don't like dream episodes,
I hate dream episodes.
Is like dream episodes. But I really like that episode because there is a legitimate problem on the ship. And Data can tell there's a problem in his quote unquote subconscious, which supposedly he shouldn't have, but he's picking up the problem on his subconscious, and it's playing itself out in dreams, which to me is a very human thing to happen. So that's why I like it, because I feel like the storyline is interesting. It's new. I've never seen something like that before. Yeah. It's weird. The dreams are weird and creepy, but all dreams are kind of weird and creepy. So I don't mind it. And I feel like we needed this part of this episode to set up that. But honestly, this episode was so useless. I think they wanted to introduce that about Data, but it's not meaty enough to be a plot on its own. It's not meaty enough to be an episode. So they smashed it with this intro part of Worf, which does not need a whole episode. Like, that could have been the first 5 minutes of part 2. So I really feel like, I don't know what happened with this episode. They should have taken the Data storyline and just thrown it at the very end of another episode. Just put it at the end. Last 10 minutes, now Data can dream. That's cool.
Da-da, solved.
Yep. And then move on.
Because really, like the Worf stuff in this episode in part 1, this could have been like a 10-minute thing as well. Like, we didn't need all the shuttle driving.
The Worf stuff could have been a
5-minute with that weird looking alien whose name is Shrek. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, all of that. It could have been one episode. I feel like this episode is a soup sandwich. Okay, imagine trying to make a sandwich, and between 2 pieces of bread is soup. Right? It is a mess. It's a mess. This episode, let's just airlock it. But let's get into it so we can airlock it and then never talk about it again.
Yeah, so we'll start with the Data, and then we'll end with the Worf.
Perfect.
So Data is on the bridge, and
we're already so over it.
Yep. This is gonna be a nice
tight 90 seconds.
Episode. Yeah. Grab a snack. You're finished. We should be done. So Data's on the bridge, and there's some power fluctuation in sickbay or something. So Riker sends him to check it out. He comes in. Dr. Bashir has this big device that he's trying to figure out what this device does in sickbay, and he hopes it's some kind of medical scanner. And there's so many questions here. Why do you have some random device that you just plugged into the Enterprise Where's Beverly right now? What is going on?
It came from the Delta Quadrant, and you're like, let me just let me just plug it in and see what it does. First of all, you have an entire motherfucking space station.
Exactly.
You can do it there. Why are you on the Enterprise's like system?
Yeah, it's
doing
weird.
This?
It's weird. And he's like, well, the Enterprise has more like advanced technology, which is true, but you didn't think you should ask for permission. I don't know. It was weird.
So
it doesn't
weird.
matter.
Anyway,
it doesn't
who
matter.
cares?
So anyways,
Doesn't matter.
So we find this thing, and then Data's like, okay, if you really want to know what it is, let's take it down to engineering to scan it instead of like plugging it into something in sickbay. So he's like, great idea. So they go to engineering and they decide to just plug it in, put some power in that bad boy and turn it on. No one thought to have a force field. Once again, we do not know what this device does at all. This could be a nuclear weapon. We don't know what this is, but we scanned it and decided to just turn it on. So yeah. So
by the way, it has like a little nozzle. It's kind of a cylindrical shaped thing, right?
It's actually a really cool shape.
Kind of looks like two exocomps face to face, sort of smashed together. And it has like a nozzle, which immediately makes me think of like a barrel of a gun. And Data stands right in front of the goddamn barrel of the gun and he goes, okay, fire it up, Geordi. Like, no.
It absolutely looks like a barrel of a gun. You're absolutely right. And even if it didn't, even if it was like totally flat, my thinking is it could explode. It could leak some pathogenic thing. There could be some terrible microbes in it.
No idea.
Can we just throw up a force field? Could we just throw up a force field so we can beam it into space if it gets out of hand? But we do none of that. They're like, punch it, Chewie. And Geordi puts all the power into it and it blasts Data. Data gets knocked out and he's out for like 42 seconds. And while he's out, that's when he goes into this like weird dream state. He's walking down a corridor and you can tell something. You guys can't see it, but Andrea just rolled her eyes really hard.
I rolled my eyes super hard. I rolled my eyes so hard, I thought it would produce like an audio.
Dream state? Oh.
No, I thought it would produce like a sound that was detectable. Okay.
He's walking through a corridor and it's kind of like wobbly, like Andrea was saying. So you know there's something weird about this corridor. He hears banging. He turns the corner and it's somebody banging on an anvil, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And the guy turns his head and it's Noonien Sung, but it's Noonien Sung when he was like 30, which we had not seen before.
By the way, Brent Spiner, without all the Data makeup, really, really good looking.
Very handsome dude, right?
I was like, wow, Noonien Sung, holy shit. I was like, Brent Spiner in 1992 was a stone cold fox, apparently, but like we didn't know that because he's covered in fucking gold paint.
Yeah, this is, I think, the first and probably last time we ever see Brent Spiner on the show, not covered in either gold paint or old people prosthetics.
Yes.
There's no paint whatsoever. There's just probably like a little bit of makeup. His hair's a little mussed.
And he has blue eyes. Who knew? Because Data has gold eyes. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Brent Spiner, okay.
He was cute. So he turns his head and he sees Data and Data's like, wait a minute. And then Data wakes up in engineering. And you're like, who cares?
Huh?
So, I mean, you're like, well, that was weird. But like, who cares? That's as far as our mind goes. It's like, oh, that was weird. But you're not like, we've got to get to the bottom of this mystery. Like, we're not like that as viewers, but Data's like that. So he ensues for the rest of the episode to ask a bunch of people questions about interpreting dreams and what that means and visions and whatever. Feel free to jump in anytime you want, because I'm just gonna like wrap this up.
No, that's about it. Like he talks to Picard, who like Picard is noticeably absent this episode. Like we see him at the very, very top of the episode walking through like DS9 being like, God, I'm gonna be up to my ears in Bajoran aqueduct studies or whatever. And then we see him for like 2 seconds when Data comes to talk to him and he's like, I'm experiencing these dreams and Picard is like, you need to explore them and like whatever. And he goes to talk to Worf and Worf is like, a dream about your father. I'm also experiencing daddy issues this episode. So like you need to take this rabbit hole like as far as it goes. Yeah. Like explore. And Data's like, cool, I'm going to do that. And then that's where we get to the second dream.
Yeah. So Data starts exploring through painting, which I really like resonate with because I remember watching Data paint all the time on TNG. And I always thought it was really cool to see like an android trying to be creative. So I actually really like that. It's similar to like the poker slice of life. Like I always loved that. So I always loved seeing Data paint. So Geordi comes to find him is like, what the heck? Like you've missed a meeting, which I can imagine Data's never done in his life. And comes in to find out that Data's painted like 23 paintings of different images, which were all beautiful. Like whoever painted these, they were so cool. So cool. Like the corridor, I want one. Like I want a painting of a freaking corridor. It was so cool.
It was really good.
Yeah. So he has all these paintings and he's like, I've tried to explore it. Everyone's told me to explore it. I've explored it through painting and I'm seeing more images, but I still feel like I don't really get it. I need to do that again. So will you help me to blast myself into Kingdom Come one more time, Geordi, for friendship's sake? And Geordi's like, dude, it's super dangerous, but I'll help you.
Yeah.
Let's go get Dr. Bashir. Whee!
And they all jump on a bicycle built for 3 and pedal themselves down to main engineering and fire up this shit eater again to see what's going to happen. And they blast him again. And he gets blasted back into his dream. And like, again, it's like now there's more to the dream, right? Because a bunch of paintings that he painted were like things he saw in the dream that we as viewers saw. But then there were other things that he was like, this wasn't in my dream, but I'm feeling compelled to like paint it. It's like a bucket of steam because like the young Noonien Sung was like blacksmithing. So he's like, okay, a bucket with steam coming out, and then like a bird's wing, and then a whole bird, and then a fucking flock of birds, and then like whatever, right? And so this is what we actually start seeing in this dream, where like he's kind of he's wobbly walking through the corridor. He's following the like banging sound of the hammer, right? Noonien Sung turns around and he's like, oh, hey, Data. And when Sung like lifts up what he was blacksmithing, it's like a raven's wing. And he plunges it into this bucket of water that creates the steam. So there's that painting. And then all of a sudden, like he disappears in the steam. And when Data kind of like, next thing he knows, kind of very much like a dream, next thing you know, he's standing on the bridge of the Enterprise, but like all the chairs are taken out and there's a bed in the middle and he's laying down in it.
And all his paintings are around.
It's like a very 90s art gallery where it's like a couple of house plants and just paintings on easels everywhere, apparently. And Noonien Sung is like, welcome to dreaming. I didn't think you would actually get here. Like I wrote this programming for you, but like you had to have like evolved a certain level to like, meh. Whatever, right? And then and then Data suddenly like closes his eyes and he's like, but this doesn't make any sense. And Sung is like, well, it's not really supposed to make sense because it's dreaming, it's dreaming. It's like where you can experience other, whatever other stuff. And then he tells Data to like, this is the best. This is fucking the best I can do.
Your explanations of Noonien Sung's everything. It's just everything. And then he's like, meh. And then he's like, oh, it's dreaming. So yeah. That explains dreaming perfectly, actually.
This is the best I got for right now, okay? But he does tell Data, he's like, sleep now. And Data's like, okay. So I guess he like falls into a dream within a dream and he turns into a bird and he can like
sleep now, Data. You are the bird. And he closes his eyes and now he's a bird flying through the hallways. And then he flies right through the bulkhead, like right through the wall, out into
Super
space.
Cool.
So cool. And then he like flies back towards the ship and then he flies back out and towards a nebula. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is one of the reasons why I love my VR headset is that.
Right.
Being able to like float in a nebula, something I will probably never be able to do. I don't know. Technology is going really fast. So who knows? But as far as I know, I'll never be able to do that. And it's like so cool. So pretty.
That was
like,
cool.
Wow.
It was really, really visually pretty. Like he flew out of the ship and then he flew kind of like alongside the ship and you can still hear the like ship sound, like the warp sound, and then like flew right back in and then wakes up. And so what he and Bashir are talking about is like, oh, so Sung programmed these dormant programs into my system to allow me, like when I reached a certain level in my growth and development, they would like unlock and then I would be able to dream. And Bashir's like, oh yeah, the exocomps that I found like from the Delta Quadrant that we zapped you with, like must have like kind of fried your circuits and like prematurely like unlocked, triggered these dormant sub-processes. And he's like, well, what are you going to do about it now? And Data's like, well, what I've decided to do is like set aside a couple of hours, like, once a week or every night or whatever to like practice dreaming and just see what happens. And Bashir's like, sounds good. Okay, my crossover is done now. Thanks, Data. Bye. And he goes right back to DS9, and that's where that storyline ends.
Yeah, I feel like they were trying to introduce Bashir as like they tried to give his character some depth by giving him interests, right? He was asking Data like, "Does your hair grow? Wow, you breathe. Your pulse moves, and all the stuff." And Data's explaining like why he breathes so that he can cool off his internal systems, or that
it's like a computer fan.
Yeah, or that his pulse is moving because it's actually lubricating all of his systems. I mean, just like blood, bringing nutrition to our bones and our muscles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that conversation was interesting, and it did show that Bashir thinks on a different level.
Yeah.
But again, as a crossover episode, this episode was just really weak and stupid. If they would have had an actual like something they had to solve together.
Yeah.
And even if you just took Geordi and Data over to DS9 and they solved something with the DS9 crew, that would have been a much stronger episode because it would have been a legitimate, there would have been a point to it, and we would have seen the personalities of all the other characters, and we would have fallen in love with them in the context of Data and Geordi, or Picard and Beverly, or whoever the F, Riker and Worf. but like having that would have been better than whatever this was. So that ends Data's storyline. That's it. That's what the whole episode was about for him. It was pointless. Next, we go to Worf's, which is almost equally pointless because this little part could have just been the first 5 minutes of part 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it starts out with him and Geordi at like, it looks like Quark's bar, but I actually don't know where they are in DS9, having a meal.
Yeah, some sort of like food court. Yeah.
Some little cantina scene that at least did not have someone singing horrible Klingon opera. Thank God.
Oh God. I've forgotten all about that. Oh,
every time I see a cantina, I think about that.
I'm re-traumatized just thinking about that.
Every time I see a cantina on this show, I'm like, oh, please don't let her show up again.
Damn it. Yeah.
So they're eating, and then Geordi's like, this food's not good. I'm going to go talk to somebody. I'm going to go get some food from another part of the space station or whatever. So this Uridian named Shrek comes up to Worf and is just like, the Klingon in Starfleet. I know exactly who you are. You're Worf, son of Moog. And Worf is like, what of it? Like, I'm trying to eat my meal. Leave me alone. And trust me, I have been there. When I was in college, we had our little eating area. I went to UCLA, so it was a freaking huge school. And the eating area was gigantic. And people would always come into the like the eating area where there's all these restaurants and stuff. And they would always try to like give you pamphlets or sell you stuff or talk to you about things because they knew you were like
out of here.
Yeah, they knew you were like stationary for a certain period of time. And it used to drive me bananas because I was like, yes, I came out to eat in a public space, but if there's no one else at my table, it's because I want to eat by myself. In a public space, but by myself. Like, I didn't want company, or I
want to be left alone.
Yeah, I didn't want company, or I would have eaten with company, or I would have stayed at the cafeteria in the dorms and eaten with people, So anyways,
also, if I wanted company, it wouldn't be with pamphlet people, okay? No. Like trying to sell me shit.
No, it would drive me crazy. But anyway, so when Worf is getting irritated, I'm just like, I feel you on that one. So this guy is like, I know your father. And Worf is like, my father died 25 years ago at Khitomer. And he's like, no, he's still alive. And I know where he is. And I'll tell you for a price. So apparently this guy is some kind of information pirate or something.
Yeah, he's like an information dealer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's an information dealer. And so Worf gets really mad, slams him against a wall, storms off. He's like, because he ends up like manhandling this guy to Shrek, admits everything he knows. And he says, your father wasn't really killed. He was captured at Khitomer by the Romulans and then taken to a prison camp where he's been all this time. And Worf is just like furious because he's like, a Klingon would never allow themselves to be captured. They would kill themselves first because it's not the warrior's way to be a prisoner. Like, we just would not be imprisoned. And we have seen that on the show. When Klingons get in prison, they break the F out because they don't stay in prisons. So, or they get imprisoned on purpose so that they could break out and do some shenanigans. So Worf storms off and he's really upset. And you know what? I understand this. Like, imagine if you thought, like, both of us, Andrea and I, our fathers have passed away. If someone told me that my dad was alive, I wouldn't believe them either. And I'd be really upset as well. And I feel like, how dare you? Like, how dare you, like, say that to me and bring up these feelings? Like, I'd be just as mad. I'd probably hit somebody a few times. And so Worf doesn't, though. He just storms off. But he's furious. And he's biting everybody's heads off on the bridge and snapping at everybody. And he eventually leaves, and Troy comes to talk to him like he's doing the most angry Tai Chi we've ever seen Worf do.
You know what I will say? Klingons do love them a glass table. Yeah. Because when your rage bubble's over, that's the first thing you break. I was like, okay.
Yeah, maybe
switch to another table.
Maybe switch to wood for Worf's quarters. I don't know. But that would be really satisfying. It looked satisfying to just be like, and it breaks and it shatters, and you're just like, yeah. So Troy comes in and they chat, and basically he tells her what Shrek said to him, and she's like, oh my gosh, your father's alive? Is that possible? And Worf's just like, it can't be possible, it's impossible. And Troy's just like, well, if it's so impossible, why are you upset? And he's just like, well, I don't know. Blah. And she's like, well, you know where to find me if you want to talk. And she just kind of leaves.
Well, I actually like that scene that she has with Worf, because what he basically says to her is, oh, Klingon would never allow themselves to be captured. That is like not the warrior way, right?
Right.
So if it's true, the shame, they've got this dialed down apparently to like a formula. The shame, the shame would trickle down for 3 generations. Why not 5? Why not 10? But the shame would trickle down for 3 generations. So myself and Alexander, and even like Alexander's sons, would feel shame as well. And so if he's alive, this is like the worst possible thing. And that's when Deanna says, you cannot deny the possibility of this being true just because you don't want to face what like reality. The discomfort. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, and I really like that about her because I'm all about like not just shoving your feelings aside because it's inconvenient. Right. So for me personally, I was like, thank you, Deanna. And she doesn't push it. She's like, if you want to talk about this more, you know where to find me. Goodbye. Right. She steps over the broken glass table and out she goes. Next thing we see,
like counselor boss right here.
She was,
because she said what needed to be said. She said it the way it needed to be said. And then she left the ball in his court and she left. She didn't press it. She didn't try to convince him. She didn't sit and go, Worf, now it's really important to connect with your family. She didn't do all that. She said, okay, well, here's what it is. Do you think it's worth it or not? You know where to find me. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I like that too. So he ends up being like, fine. Like, I guess we got to look into this stupid Shrek's claim. So he finds Shrek and he's like, fine, give me the coordinates and you're going to take me there. And Shrek's like, I have like other things to do. I don't have like a ship. And Worf's like, I know you that you do. So like you take me and I will pay you at the end. And if you are lying, like there is no amount of places you can hide where I wouldn't find you. So I suggest you get on board.
Yeah. So this scene to me was just like, it was funny, not funny. So it was funny because it was just like ridiculous. But then other parts I was like, oh, it's still going. But he goes to him and he's like threatening him. And he's like, all right, I want to know the truth. Tell me what happened to my dad. And he's like, I'll tell you for a price. And then he like dangles him off the balcony and he's like, tell me now. And he's like, all right, I'll tell you everything now.
Yeah.
So it's like,
didn't take long.
Yeah. He's like, I'll give you the coordinates for a price. And he's like, you're not going to give me the coordinates. You're going to take me there personally. Oh, I can't take you because I don't have a ship. Well, I already looked at the manifest and I know you have a ship. Well, I could take you, but for a price, as long as you pay me up front. I'm not paying you up front. Okay, well, that's fine too.
Worst negotiation in history.
Yes.
I'll never tell. I'll kill you if you don't tell. Well, okay, I'll tell you.
So it all started when I was 6, right? And you're just like, I'll tell you everything. So but the thing I thought that was funny, other than the fact that he kept flip-flopping on everything he was really dead set on, was that Worf is like, threatening to murder him on Deep Space Nine in front of everybody. Which I was like,
buddy, you're an officer in Starfleet. This is
Thank you.
This is a court-martial. This is not okay. I actually
and you see all the crowd underneath looking up like, I wonder if they're gonna drop it. If he's gonna drop that guy. Like call security.
In my notes, I wrote conduct unbecoming an officer, Worf. Okay.
In my notes, I wrote change your outfit before you threaten murder. Like, don't do it in your uniform. If you were just like a dude, maybe people would just be like, oh, it's just some random Klingon.
Yeah, it's Deep Space Nine. This is kind of the Wild West again. Like, you never know. Shit happens. Yeah, no. He's over here waving the like Federation flag, about to stab this guy in the face with it. I was like, Jesus. Next thing you know, they're zipping off to this Romulan world, or this like world in Romulan space.
Yeah.
And, Worf is like, what kind of person sells information? And this Shrek is like, dude, I have my reasons. Whatever. Here's the deal. It's a dense jungle. You're going to have to do this like 20-kilometer like hike or whatever from where I drop you off to like where this camp is. And Worf is very like, I got this. I can handle it. And I love after watching Avatar where I'm like, you do not want to be at night in this alien world with all these freaking animals that are going to kill you. Yeah. Worf's like, I got it. I'm fine. I got it. And Shrek is like, the such and such like needle asp likes to strike its prey from like above. So I wouldn't look up if I were you. Or like maybe you extra look up to make sure they're not there. Something like that.
He said, make sure you look up from time to time. Because the needle snake loves to strike from above. Ha ha ha. And you're like, oh my gosh, maybe wear a helmet.
I
don't know. I'm sure we have some kind of gear. That's what I thought. I was like, there's got to be some kind of protective jungle gear you could be wearing.
I can see you trouncing through first of all, I can't see you trouncing through the jungle, but if I did, you'd be wearing like a big ass football helmet to keep
I would basically be dressed like an astronaut. Like keep all the air and contamination, everything out. Keep the mosquitoes out. Keep the freaking brain stabbing snakes out. Keep the scorpions out. Keep the freaking trees that hit you with a thorn and make you hallucinate your past.
Yep.
All of
oh
that,
man, the shades of gray spiky.
And can we just go back to like, does his ship not have a transporter? You can't just transport me to like 3 feet in front of there's no people.
I guess there's dense foliage, but like you can transport through like lead. These leaves rocks ain't stopping you, okay?
No, transport me a good 15 feet from the camp
why don't you just transport me in the camp, like in a corner, so I don't have to scale a wall or anything? It was like the secret garden up in here. Like so Worf.
Secret garden.
It really was like climb
but
a wall.
The secret garden was a little harder to get into. This was like, here's a gap in the fence, right? He could have just walked through the door, but he decided to climb the wall instead.
Yeah, so he ends up actually like coming across like a naked Klingon woman who's like bathing and singing a song to herself, just like every Disney movie. And he like kind of watches her and she hears like the rustling leaves and she's like, so-and-so, is that you? And he kind of jumps out and she's like, who are you? What's going on? And he's like, I need you to tell no one that you saw me.
She's like, you're a Klingon. It's like, yeah, he is a Klingon. How'd you figure that out?
Yeah.
He is in fact a Klingon.
And he says, you must tell no one you saw me. And she's like, okay. And just goes skipping.
Yes. She's like, deal. Sounds good.
Worf. Worf. This doesn't sound like a really solid plan. You didn't have a plan at all, did you? You didn't, did you?
The plan was to get the Uridian to take him not to the prison camp, but like 20 kilometers away, and then walk him halfway there, and then point in the southerly direction, towards a river, and you could follow the river to the
girl. Worf's plan was to put on his espionage outfit and hop in a shuttle, and he had not thought beyond that.
Turns out that worked. So
it worked great. He ends up scaling the wall of the secret garden and getting into the prison camp, and things are not right immediately. It doesn't look prison campy, right? First of all, there's a group of what looks like elderly Klingons who are sitting around like a bonfire and they're like singing their songs and telling their stories. I'm not seeing like guards everywhere, right? So,
and what was cool about that scene was I was like, wow, I bet you they'd never actually see elderly Klingons on the homeworld. Like we saw that one old lady that Picard went to talk to that time.
Yeah,
but it's like you don't usually get like, it's like a sign of shame if you have like gray hair as a Klingon, because why didn't you die in battle?
Died in battle.
Yeah, what have you been doing your whole life? So to see a whole group of Klingons with gray hair. Yeah. So, the costume and makeup was so good.
Unless you're like the head of the High Council or something, that's it, right?
Yeah, so, and I don't even think he had gray hair.
Nah, he was just kind of... He's kind of like old and...
Yeah, he was just kind of old. But he wasn't as old as these people. These people look way older than that dude.
Yeah,
I actually really like that. I was like, oh, elders. They probably don't even have elders. They have like slightly older, but not actual like AARP
there's young
members.
And there's older, and you don't get to elderly if you're Klingon. Yeah. So Worf ends up like seeing one of the elders kind of like break off and like kind of go walking down a hallway. So he does the Worf thing where he like grabs him and puts his hand over the dude's mouth and to prevent him from screaming, apparently. And he's like, I am Worf, son of Moog. Is Moog here? Is he alive? Like, fill me in. And the old man is like, you should not have come here. Like, first of all, Moog died in Kittimer. Like, he's not here. So I'm like, okay. So
really such a bummer. Let's go find Shrek and hit him in the face really hard. Because you don't do
with
that
the Federation flag, okay?
With the Federation flag multiple times. You don't do that to people and tell them that your father, who you thought has been dead for almost 30 years, is really alive in some secret camp. You don't even believe the secret camp is real. Turns out the secret camp is real, and there are Klingons there, and there are elderly. Oh, but not your dad. Your dad isn't here. Like, that to me is like snatching him away again. Like, ugh.
Yes, because like all of the other like facts that Shrek sold to Worf like were true. So why couldn't this be true? Like
why couldn't Moog be there?
Why couldn't Moog be there? So as he's talking to this elderly Klingon, Worf is like, I'm here to like rescue you. How many Klingons are there? And they're like, oh, there's like 70 something. He's like, okay, well, I gotta put a plan together to like rescue you. And they're like, we are home. Like, this is where we live. You should not have come. And so things are just not adding up, right? And Worf is so tunnel visioned on his plan that he is not reading the room and being like, wait, something is like off about this situation here. And he's about to go all gung-ho about getting them out of there, but like fails to notice that like guards, like the Romulan guards, come around the corner with their like phasers, and the elderly says, we are not leaving here and neither are you. And this is like where the episode ends. And you're like, damn, Worf, you should have read the room a little bit better. Like some intel wouldn't have gone amiss.
Yeah. Right before that, we find out that this guy was really good friends with Worf's dad and even knew him as a kid. So Worf's dad died when Worf was about 5 or 6. And so this guy talks about like, we took you on your first hunt when you were like 6 years old and da-da-da. And I remember like, basically, I remember dangling you on my knee when you were a little kid. And Worf is like, wait a minute, I remember you too. Like, this is crazy. This is to meet somebody you haven't even thought of in over 20 years is really, really crazy. And so they have this bonding moment. And then right before that, he's like, let me call the elders. He calls the elders, and the elders are like, what? Who is this dude? And they're like, it's Mog's son. And they're like, oh no. And then the Romulans come around the corner and they're like, yeah, you're not leaving. And Worf, he has this look of betrayal because they were just sharing this moment of like, I remember you as a kid. I remember you when I was a kid. And this moment ends with like, you're not leaving. And it's kind of like, dang, I thought we were all on the same side. And we're really confused about what's going on now and why he can't leave. And the episode ends. And I think it was a really good ending. I do like that cliffhanger ending. But again, all of this could have been 5 minutes at the beginning of part 2. We didn't need the space shuttle ride at all. The Uridian could have just said, I know your dad's alive. Worf could have threatened to kill him. He could have said, I'll take you there. And boom, they're in the jungle. Like, we could have just done that. And
we could have just fast forwarded through that.
Yeah. And this part could have been before the commercial break. When they're like, we're not leaving, neither are you.
Also, let's just obviously erase all of the Data storyline. Okay. We don't need any of that.
We don't need any of that.
Yeah. This whole storyline with Worf could have been the cold open. Yeah. Right. Where like he gets this like subspace communication with some secret coordinates and like a message that says like Mog is still alive. He's being held at this camp. Go find him. And then he like shows up and then it's like bum bum bum. Now you're stuck here too, along with all of us. And this is our home and we're not leaving. You're right. And then it could have been the whole rest of the episode. I don't know if there's more Data dreaming stuff in next week's episode. And I certainly hope not.
I don't think so. I think it's all Worf.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. This episode, obviously, I don't even need to say this, but it's a total pass. Like the most interesting part of this whole story is like the Worf side of it, but we're just getting like the prequel to like the action.
Yeah. We're not even in the good stuff.
We're not even in the good stuff. The Dreamscape, I hate Dreamscape stuff. Also, the DS9 thing is super shoehorned. Like this one, this is like a D+ episode right here for me.
I think what would have been better is if this episode was a legitimate crossover episode, like a whole new episode. Like we could have different.
They literally could have done anything other than this, and it would have been better.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so this one's a skipper. And you don't even need it because you know how every time they do a 2-parter, in the second part they always say previously on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh my God, why didn't we just do that?
You don't need this episode at all because they're going to tell you whatever important stuff you missed at the beginning of next episode. And then they're going to say, and now the conclusion. So really skip this one and check us out next week because next week's episode's really good.
All right. What are your final thoughts on this before we wrap? Or were those it?
My final thoughts were this episode setup, because part 1 is always the setup.
Yeah.
And I tend to not love the part 1s because they tend to like drag on. For me, I would say I like Chain of Command part 1, but usually I'm kind of like, oh, let's kind of fast forward a little bit. This one, so much more so. This felt really slow and really pointless. So my final thought was we could have just done the Worf episode. Like we just didn't need this one. That was my final thought.
Yeah, totally didn't need it. Well, all right. Well, that's that for this week.
Was that your final thought as well?
Yeah, no, that's when I said like it's a pass and the Dreamscape stuff sucks and then the shoehorn. Anyway, all right. Hopefully next week will be better. I'm pretty sure it will be because then we'll actually get to some like really interesting Worf stuff where he can like dig into his backstory. Next week we are breaking down season 6, episode 17, Birthright part 2, guaranteed to be longer than this week's episode. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out for this like mozzarella stick snack sized episode. We will catch you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.